There is lots of food over there. Get up and get it as you need it. I'm Phyllis Mandel. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Bill's daughter, his eldest child. At my mother's memorial, Bill said he promised he would try and get through it without crying. I will do my best to do the same, but I think that if you know the Mandels, we're all very emotional people, and we tend to cry a lot at things that make us both happy and sad. So, I don't know how many of you have read his autobiography, but I'm calling it to your attention because 20 years ago, before he actually wrote it, I called him up one day. I knew he was in the middle of writing it, and I said, "Dad, what should I sing at your memorial?" He burst out laughing and he said, "Well, I have no intention of dying soon, so I don't know why you're asking that question." Well, we could assume I was either mad at him or happy at him or whatever, and who knows what I was wishing. But one of the things that I thought, and I said to him that day, was I've always thought of you as a man of two countries, both the United States, and the USSR. I think you all know that Bill had a phenomenal relationship to and concern about that country, and that it was his heart. And even long after the unfortunate demise of the socialist state, Bill refused to believe that that was the situation. So, as a young child, I was old enough to remember World War II, and hearing Bill talk a lot about what was going on, and he was at that time writing for UP and AP Press about Russian troops and what they were doing. And songs were always part of our family history. And I have to say something about Joe Adler, who is going to sing here later on, that I learned history in many, many ways through music. And that when we were children, we would take long drives with Bill. That was one of the things he loved to do, sometimes way too long for our pleasure. We got tired of sitting in the car, but we sang every song you could possibly imagine. American folk songs, Russian folk songs, war songs from every country in the world that was involved in World War II. So at the end of my conversation with Dad that day about what I was going to sing, he said, "Well, I suppose it would be Old Abe Lincoln." So those of you that know it, please join with me. My voice is shaky today, and I am absolutely a nervous wreck. So.
Have some vodka. You need some vodka.
Old Abe Lincoln, a great big giant of a man was he. He was born in an old log cabin, and he worked for a living.
That's right.
Splitting rails. Now Abe, he knew right from wrong, for he was honest as the day is long. And these are the words he said: "This country with its institutions belong to the people who inhabit it. This country with its constitution belongs to us who live in it. Whenever we may grow weary of the existing government, we can exercise our constitutional rights to amend it, or revolutionary right to dismember or overthrow it." Now Abe once ran a little country store in Salem Town, Illinois, and a woman once paid him 6 pence more than she ought to have done. A mistake. So off through the storm old Abe went, And he paid that woman back every cent, for Abe was an honest man. Now Abe was close to the ground, though he towered up 6'4" in his bare feet. And his heart was as big as the whole country, with room for more black folks too. And he never forgot from whence he came, though he landed in the White House and got great fame, for Abe was a working man. This country with its institutions belongs to the people who inhabit it. This country with its constitution belongs to us who live in it. Whenever they shall grow weary of the existing government, we can exercise our constitutional rights of amending it, or the revolutionary right to dismember or overthrow it. Now old Abe's eyes were set way back deep in his head, a thinking man. But you didn't need learning to understand what old Abe said. Listen to this. This republic will never be free till the black man's out of slavery, and that made the Civil War. Now sometimes Abe, he wavered and shook like a great tall tree. That's true. For he wanted peace between the states in this country, like the Bible says. But Abe never crawled when the showdown came, like some people now who take his name. He beat those slave men down. Now old Abe Lincoln's dead and gone, 150 years, a great man. And every year the party he made says Lincoln's theirs. No, sir. For if old Abe were living right now, to the man at the bench and the man at the plow, these are the words he'd say, very appropriate for today. This country with its institutions belongs to the people who inhabit it. This country with its constitution belongs to us who live in it. Whenever they shall grow weary of the existing government, they can exercise their constitutional right of amending it, or the revolutionary right to dismember or overthrow it. So that was Bill's favorite song. I would say amongst his other songs, which I unfortunately can't sing at this moment, were Russian songs, which we learned in large number. Meadowlands, the Volga Boatman, many, many others. Okay, so the next person who's going to speak is my son. Are you going to speak next?
Kevin.
Okay.
Kevin.
Is my son Kevin, who is going to read from Fred Hirsch. Bob, where are you? Would you please come up here and talk about Fred for a minute? Or you want them?
Yeah. Let's do
Okay,
Kevin.
so why don't you? Okay, why don't you introduce?
So actually, Fred, who is going to give the main address today, is sick. There are two people we really wanted you to hear from. One is Larry Pinckney. Larry is a former Black Panther whose life Bill literally saved when Larry was being set up for assassination in jail for making peace between the Black, Latino, and Caucasian inmates. And Bill broadcast about it and a whole campaign developed, and they actually blocked the assassination. Larry lived to tell the tale. He can't be here today. He's also very sick. And Brother Gerald Smith, also a former Black Panther, is going to read Larry's remarks. Gerald.
In all honesty, Bill was also a mentor, one of my mentors. Taught me a lot about journalism, to be specific, and even more about the radio. What a treasure, man. Okay, this is Larry Pinckney's memorial statement regarding Bill Mandel. I find it difficult to believe that Bill Mandel has physically departed from us. To his family, Phyllis, Bob, and Dave, I extend my deepest condolences, and I, with his many friends and admirers, share this enormous loss. William Marks Mandel was a dear friend and a mentor to me. There are really no words to adequately express the depth of my respect, love, and admiration for him. I remember his sharp wit and the vigor in his deep and melodic voice. I remember how his eyes would light up when he shared with me his first-hand political experiences with the likes of Paul Robeson, Pete Seeger, and Lawrence Ferlinghetti. I remember spending time at his home when he and his late wife and political partner, Tanya. I used to love to listen to them politically spar with each other, and was so blessed and honored that I could actually quietly listen and learn from their exchanges. Tanya always held her own, and Bill clearly knew that she kept him on his toes. I remember the thrill of sitting with them in their kitchen dining area as they shared special cheeses with each other and with me. Bill allowed me to see his very human side. The Bill Mandel that I knew was the one who shed tears when he spoke of the trials and tribulations of his family and his political comrades. I was allowed to see the deep, special, and well-deserved pride that Bill shared with me that he had in and for Tanya, Phyllis, Bob, and Dave. I remember the letters and poems of strength, love, and encouragement that Bill sent me in the early 1980s when I was a political prisoner. I remember his deep respect for the original Black Panther Party and his consistent support for political prisoners, including Mumia Abu-Jamal. Perhaps most of all, however, I remember Bill's smile, his rare, all-encompassing smile. In a strange way, Bill's smile reminded me of when I met Malcolm X, El-Haj Malik El-Shabazz, and Malcolm gave me an all-encompassing smile. To me, Bill Mandel was a combination of John Brown, Frederick Douglass, and Malcolm X. Bill, of course, like all of us humans, had his flaws, but they were minuscule compared to his incredible political and social contributions to humanity nationally and globally. I respectfully urge any who may not have yet read Bill Mandel's latest book, Saying No to Power, Autobiography of a 20th Century Activist and Thinker, introduction by Howard Zinn, to read and reread and share it. It is my hope that we will not merely memorialize Bill Mandel, but also emulate and always remember him. In so doing, we celebrate not only Bill Marks Mandel, but we celebrate the very best in ourselves. We are all so blessed to have had Bill in our lives. I missed you, Bill, and my love for you is undying. Thank you. Power to the people. Larry Pinckney.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, so I believe my nephew Kevin is now going to read a thing from Fred Hirsch. Fred was Bill's oldest living friend and comrade. Fred is a plumber, and Fred was very, very deeply involved in the farm worker struggles. But I think the thing that perhaps he would be most proud of is most of you in this room know that the AFL-CIO has a less than honorable history on the question of immigration, on being an arm of the CIA. And Fred led this successful fight 15 years ago to change the AFL-CIO's historic, long-recorded opposition to immigrants and to embrace immigrant workers as our brothers and sisters. And this is Fred's statement.
Hi all.
Aloha.
I'm Bill's grandson.
Into the mic,
My name
please.
is Kevin Glick, and I will be reading Fred's statement. I received this yesterday, so I haven't I've reviewed some of it, so bear with me if I'm a little
Get on
over to the mic. Yes, okay. So bear with me if I'm a little slow at it, but we'll run through it. You good there? Okay. The evening our family arrived in San Jose on our transcontinental migration from New York in 1957, we happened upon Bill's KPFA program on our car radio. Our three daughters were asleep. Liza on the front seat with me, and Leslie and Lori on the back seat with Ginny. We pulled up to our rented digs in East San Jose and listened to Bill. Ginny had met him at an Abraham Lincoln Brigade event in New York. I knew Bill only on the radio. I called him the next day, starting a process that made our families fast friends through many years and made me his lifelong admiring comrade. Bill was brilliant, proud, handsome, and brave, truth-seeking son of the working class. He was a hero of mine from when we first heard his voice on the radio until the day he died. One of the greatest pleasures that our family enjoyed through the years was visiting with the Mandels, sharing stories, and learning from Bill's clearest insight just how the world turns. We were talking about visiting Bill on Thanksgiving Day last year. We couldn't. We then learned the news Bill had died that very day, November 24th. I wrote this through tears. I'll miss him through the years. He was a true hero in his undying quest for peace, justice, and socialism, and the pursuit of honest and searching journalism. He stood strong in his beliefs, rejecting any kind of dogmatism. It was a great honor of my life to know Bill Mandel in firm and warm friendship. He will be with us forever through his works and his words. Bill may be best known for facing down Senator Joseph McCarthy on national television in a 1953 Senate committee hearing. Almost spitting out his words, Mandel told the senator, "This is a book burning. You lack only the tinder to set fire to the books as Hitler did 20 years ago, and I'm going to get that across to the American people." McCarthy and his Red Scare instilled fear in the body politic for about a decade. Bill said, "It's the sense of moral indignation that overwhelms my fears." On May 3rd, 1960, at City Hall in San Francisco, under the glare of newsreel floodlights, Bill responded to this question posed by the House Un-American Activities Committee Counsel, Richard Aarons. "Are you now, or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?" Bill took a deep breath, and with almost a snarl in his voice, he said, honorable beaters of children, sadists both uniformed and in plain clothes, distinguished Dixiecrats wearing the garb of gentlemen, eminent Republicans who oppose an accommodation with the one country with which we must live at peace in order for us and all of our children to survive. My boy of 15 left this room a few minutes ago in sound health and not jailed, solely because I asked him to be in here to learn something about the procedures of the United States government and one of its committees. Had he been outside, where a son of a friend of mine had his head split by these goons operating under your orders, my boy today might have paid the penalty of permanent injury or a police record for desiring to come here and hear how this committee operates. If you think that I'm going to cooperate with you, a bunch of Judases who sit here in violation of the US Constitution, if you think I will cooperate in any way, you are insane. I think Bill's life and many accomplishments were driven by his love and faith in people, us, the working people. He saw an organic connection between the personal and the political and said, the most important human right is the right to live. It is almost the most important civil liberty. Bill's courage in facing down the congressional committees, which could have imprisoned him for contempt, is based on his idea that these people aren't so tough. They're only strong when you are silent. They only look normal when you pretend that they are. So don't be silent, pretend that they're normal.
Yeah.
And in these days, when so many of us can sense the fire of fascism in the rancid breath of our new president, or the new president, let's remember these words of the brilliant Bill Mandel. Fascism is not openly terrorist to the mass of people, but makes unprecedented use of social demagogy. It requires that politically decisive mass of citizens is willing to use force to deny democratic expression to its citizens. And so, my friends, in the spirit of our wonderful Bill Mandel, let us all keep fighting on Trumpism, racism, and the warmongers who would deliver us unto fascism.
Yeah.
Phyllis. James.
Yes. James Van, will you please come up? Jane is also one of Bill's oldest and longest friends. And for the last 10 years since Bill was injured, has seen him nearly every week. The family is eternally grateful to him. And here's James.
Thank you, Phyllis, and good afternoon, everyone. I was a proud friend and admirer of many years of Mr. Bill Marks Mandel. I first became familiar with Mr. Mandel shortly after I moved from Santa Monica to Berkeley in 1957. At that time, in order to continue my studies in architecture at Berkeley. The beginning of my acquaintance with Bill was happenstance. One day when browsing radio stations for background as I studied, I happened upon an unusually resonant voice that projected such learned command of his non-typical subject that I was immediately mesmerized. I became an instant devotee of speaking out with Bill Mandel programs at every available opportunity throughout the many years of his KPFA broadcast. While I always found Bill's programs on the Soviet Union and the Soviet press most insightful, imaginative, and informative on a subject and on subjects and analyses that were otherwise never reported, It was yet a few years before I actually met Bill face to face. Our first meeting was in the later 1960s at a KPFA fair, where at the time, Mr. Mandel was signing his most recent book. I introduced myself, related my admiration of and devotion to his programs, and my impressiveness with his preparation and command of the unique subject matter. Each program I felt was equivalent to a graduate seminar on subjects completely new and that would otherwise not be exposed. Since that auspicious meeting over the years, I came to meet Bill's beloved late wife, Tanya, and she's been described here very accurately. And also his children, Bob, Phyllis, and Dave, and became more familiar with Bill on an informal level. The Mr. Mandel I came to know was not only a person of impressive knowledge, but one who was strikingly handsome, excitingly agile, physically active, and an engaged, highly interested participant in a broad array of social, cultural, and intellectual pursuits. Throughout the many years of our relationship, my admiration for the man I had come to know continued to balloon. The breadth of learning, his font of innate knowledge, command of delivery, and general expertise were beyond impressive. To be in the presence of Bill Mandel for even minutes is testament to being in the presence of a truly remarkable and accomplished person, in short, an intellectual giant. And then came January 2006, and the fateful, unfortunate auto accident that befell Mr. Mandel. Throughout his 4-month stay in hospitals and care facilities, I was one of a devoted army of admirers who regularly visited Bill, once or twice weekly, observing the extended period of his rehabilitative treatments. Though suffering from an horrendous accident, it was immediately apparent that the man I visited in the hospital was a totally different person from the man I had known for the many years of our relationship. Overnight, the eyes that were so alert, so observant of all things, were now literally blinded. The ears that heard and registered all utterances were now literally blocked. The voice that so resonantly commanded attention was now virtually silent. The agility so noticeable and admired now lacked all balance and stability. The legs that frequently climbed the challenging Berkeley hills now require constant support. And he could barely endure walking slowly a few blocks. The memory so sharp as to recall not examples, but entire histories now dottered, stammered, and halted. Over the intervening years, I attempted to visit Bill at least almost weekly. Finally, 11 years after the calamity, the Bill that so visibly existed prior to the accident was already gone. Bill would sometimes say to me, and I would be speechless, "What am I living for?" The intellectual giant had become a different person. And even monitoring his daily onslaught, he stopped monitoring his daily onslaught of emails and phone calls. The vigorous mind that formerly sent out treatises in response to his many communications now suffered because of diminished eyesight and struggles to discern even the who of old acquaintances when sometimes he might meet or might come in contact with them was a chore. He became almost completely homebound required constant rest and frequent naps throughout the day. His former remarkable and fierce independence was replaced by the need for constant full-time caretakers who must do all chores. And in this regard, I must say that I came to meet a remarkable person, his caretaker for the last 11 years, Miss Aline Bowen, a great person and a great family. Real pleasure that we get a benefit as a result of this relationship.
Yes.
The Bill I knew, respected, admired, and loved for many, many years was still admired, respected, and loved. But the Mr. Mandel of the period prior to 2006 was no more. Bill Marks Mandel, presente.
Thanks, Jerry. I think some of you might have seen some of this before it happened.
My name is William Marks Mandel.
But you are what?
I am a Jew.
So am I, and I don't see that that's an issue here.
Well, a Jew who works for McCarthy is thought of very ill by most of the Jewish people in the
Are you a member of the Communist Party?
My dear sir, I have never consulted with the Communist Party in any manner.
Constitution, I'm going to answer it in my own way. This is a thought learning. You will have only a kingdom set fire to the books of Hillary 20 years ago. And I am going to get that across to the American people.
Have a different name to use in Communist Party meetings.
The chairman apparently assumes the witness to be stupid. I refuse to answer that question, but my privilege in the Fifth Amendment not to testify against myself.
You work today.
In that case, I will answer it first. I am employed as a copywriter by New York City. It was known to the members of the committee who were present yesterday, and everyone here now knows this, that my present employment has nothing whatever to do with the purposes of this committee. I asked the committee yesterday, in the spirit of fairness, which I doubted it had, not to place my job in jeopardy for that reason. One of the committee members, either the chairman or one of the gentlemen whom I do not recognize offhand, then indicated that I should be willing to pay the price for the activities in which I engage. That was an admission by the committee that has arrogated itself the right to exact punishment, although it is not a court of law and deprives one of due process of law. That punishment has ranged from fines, ranging from several $1,000s in the case of people dismissed, up to the fact that you, Senator McCarthy, murdered Major Raymond Kaplan.
Maybe I'm honored by your private views of your own, but I'm a little serious about this work. I would assume I had it to do with what the Soviet Far East and Central Asia, and to do it authentically, you would have to travel some over there. Did you travel in that area?
I was in the Soviet Union. I was not in that area. Einstein was never inside the atom. He seems to be able to understand it. I have lived all my life in this country, but for 1 year in Russia. I was born here. I do not think that I am as competent to write a book on the United States, and I've traveled widely in this country. I do not think that I am as competent to write a book on the United States as I am to write a book on Russia. Because to write a book about a country requires more than living in it, traveling in it, even if one has pretty good eyes. One has to study it. One has to use all its scholarly and other resources. And I've had the privilege of utilizing one of the finest collections in this country, the collection of the Herbert Hoover Institute at Stanford University, which engaged me as a fellow on the basis of books I had previously written, including that book, which it deemed to merit my engagement as an expert on Russia. And I'd like to, sir?
Did you go to London School near Moscow?
I was 14 years of age when I went there. I went to Moscow State University and studied biochemistry.
Justified that you felt our cause in South Korea was unjust. Do you feel the cause of the Chinese communists and the North Koreans is a just cause?
Exactly as just as it would be for us to invade Mexico or Canada if they had come into those countries as we came into South Korea.
You were a member of this committee of the jurisdiction is to examine into the efficacy of the expenditure of funds and the efficacy of the operation. Would you regard this as a very improper exploration if you were up here?
If I were a member of this committee, I would regard it most important to discover how Senator McCarthy saved $170,000 on a $15,000 salary.
If you put on a campaign against the committee, you will not put on the campaign within the committee room.
Poor Senator McCarthy. You can dish it out, but you can't take it.
Now remember, the committee hearings were supposed to be public, so a lot of people came to attend simply as spectators. They queued up outside the hearing room, waiting to be admitted. They had assumed admission would be on a first-come, first-served basis, but the committee wasn't playing it that way. People bearing passes issued by the committee to carefully selected groups were admitted by the side door, and the overwhelming majority of the seats were occupied by these pass-carrying friends of the committee. Here is Police Inspector Dan Shelley on duty outside the door of the hearing room on Thursday morning, waving back the students who were unable to gain admission. It just wasn't that way at all. Now let's listen to the demonstration. No hint was given of what was to come. Out of the sight of the students, the police began uncoiling the fire hoses. The students tried to demonstrate their nonviolent intentions by sitting down. Some witnesses heard a policeman shout something to this effect: "So you want some of this, do you? Well, you're going to get it." And then the water was turned on. That's what really happened. But here, look at these scenes of police rousting students from City Hall. Which group is using all-out violence? The students or the police? And just suppose, for the sake of argument, that a student had leaped a barricade and assaulted an officer. That would certainly be grounds for his arrest. But would that, if it occurred, have justified the police in handling all the students in this way? The fact is, no one leaped a barricade. No one assaulted an officer. Then why did the police use the hoses? Only the police know that.
Are you now, or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
Sir, I am 42 years of age. I have never had to face a jury as defendant or grand jury as witness in my life. I have committed no crime under any of the laws of this country and am not engaged in subversion. I certainly shall not answer questions representing allegations against me made by persons not present and not identified, whom I cannot confront and whom my lawyer cannot cross-examine as to their truthfulness.
Do you honestly apprehend, sir, that if you told this committee truthfully while you're under oath whether or not you are now this instant or ever have been a member of the Communist Party, you would be supplying information which might be used against you in a criminal proceeding?
Honorable beaters of children and sadists, uniformed and in plain clothes, distinguished Dixiecrat wearing the clothing of a gentleman, eminent Republican who opposes an accommodation with the one country with which we must live at peace in order for us all and our children to survive. If you think that I am going to cooperate with this collection of Judases, of men who sit there in violation of the United States Constitution, if you think I will cooperate with you in any way, you are insane.
Hard act to follow. We have a really wonderful number of guests here today. We see so many people we know and love. Bill was very fortunate during those last years that James spoke of to share his house with a wonderful lady, Eileen Bowen, and he had a tenant in the study that Bill used to do all his work in, but he could no longer work and he no longer desired to do so. We were very fortunate to have a young man move in and it helped pay the costs. And that young man is a fellow named Eric Obertaler, who is a fellow musician, engineer, producer, recording artist. You can hear him occasionally play around California, I hope. And Eric got to know Bill pretty well as his roommate, and he's been kind enough to agree to read you some notes that he sent to us after Bill's passing. Eric, who is known as EO.
Thanks, Dave. I wrote this on the day Bill passed away, and I shared it with my friends on Facebook, and Dave asked me to share it. William Marks Mandel, my housemate and landlord, passed away this morning. He was 99 years old. Bill led a remarkable life. He was a leading Soviet scholar and had a weekly hour-long program on KPFA for nearly 40 years. He famously confronted Joseph McCarthy on national television during the 1953 Senate committee hearing. This is a book burning. You lack only the tinder to set fire to the books as Hitler did 20 years ago, and I am going to get that across to the American people. When he was subpoenaed again in 1960 by the House Un-American Activities Committee at a hearing in San Francisco City Hall, hundreds of protesting Bay Area college students were blasted with fire hoses and dragged down the marble steps by police officers, leaving some seriously injured. When they asked him, "Are you now, or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?" he responded, as we know, "Honorable beaters of children, sadists, uniformed and in plain clothes, if you think I will cooperate with you in any way, you are insane." He then spent the remainder of his testimony respectfully telling his inquisitors to go to hell. This man was a living link to another dark time in our history, and his spirit is an inspiration to us today. Then, the powers that be wanted to round up the communists. Now, they want to round up the Muslims. It's the same hate. Confused and misguided, they stand ever ready to blast down their own children in service of their own fear. Bill's life is an example for all of us on this Thanksgiving Day, when our friends, standing in solidarity with the original people of this land, are being brutalized by riot police. I'm reminded of one of my favorite songs by Joni Mitchell, "The Judgment of the Moon and the Stars." You've got to shake your fists at lightning now. You've got to roar like forest fire. You've got to spread your light like blazes all across the sky. They're gonna aim the hoses on you, show them you won't expire, not till you burn up every passion, not even when you die. This house will be sold. For the past 7 years, I've created music in the room that was once Bill's study. It's a magical place overlooking the serene hills of Wildcat Canyon, infused with the palpable vibrations of revolutionary thought. Wisps of mist are pulled over the ridge, past my window and into the valley, a pilgrimage of spirits, joining a processional river of cloud below. Searing rainbows, choruses of coyotes and frogs, and unseen forces have all borne witness to what I imagine as Bill's dreams of utopian culture, as well as my awestruck, fumbling attempts to capture nature's dance in sculptures of sound. I'll strive to take this feeling with me as I search for a new place to live and create. And above all, on this day, Thanksgiving. Gratitude for the life of a man who has gone before and held a torch to light the way. Rest in peace, Bill.
Couldn't have a better attendant, could you?
No.
Thanks, you. Bill's great-granddaughter is here today. Alana Giddich is going to get up and say a few words about that old character she knew so well.
As you can see, I take after Tanya more than the Mandel height here.
Get up on the mic, Alana.
Am I close enough?
Yes.
Hi. I'll also be reading what I wrote on Thanksgiving, actually, when Bill passed. I won't make any promises to get it through this without crying, so.
We'll join you.
In my great-grandparents' house in the Berkeley Hills, I pulled out my toy box and stacked and unstacked Matryoshka dolls, built towers of blocks, while my great-grandfather sat on the floor next to me, encouraging. Maybe I would be an engineer like his father. At the kitchen table, where in my memories there's always sunlight streaming through the blinds. I would ask for the 2 toy jesters on top of the fridge, the kind where the wooden clowns hang on strings and you squeeze the 2 wooden sticks to which they're attached to make the clowns do acrobatics around the string. But my gestures were labeled neatly in my pop-up's handwriting, Trotsky and Lenin. In this house, I marveled at the walls of books with thin wires running across the shelves, so we would not be crushed by the physical weight of knowledge in an earthquake. Watched beneath paintings of abolitionists and workers, tried to make sense of the poster on the hallway door that read Jewish does not mean Zionist, with 2 women having a conversation about Israel. In this house, I learned that we are culturally Jewish, but we don't believe in God. We believe in literature and playwrights and knowledge. Other things we don't do: cooperate with the police, talk to the FBI, stay silent when faced with injustice. My great-grandfather passed away in his sleep on Thanksgiving, age 99, the last of my great-grandparents to go. May his memory be for a blessing. May it also be a reminder of the power of righteous anger, that there can be no compromise with fascists, that justice is hard work, but that there is still time to swim in lakes, take joy in giant bowls of ice cream, and sit on the floor with a little girl and her blocks.
In the preparation for today, which had many, many facets to it, I forgot the order of the speakers, so I have to be reminded. The next person who's going to speak is Eileen Bowen. Eileen was Bill's longtime caregiver. Without her, he would not have survived, and neither would we. Eileen, please come up and talk.
Aloha, everybody. Aloha. Yeah, that's where I come from. I don't know where to start, but I have something with Bill. For 10 years, 8 months, been with him. And I really like to share with you how wonderful this man in the beginning, in 2006, in May 16, I give Bill 3 words because he talked to me politics all the time. I don't like it because I'm not at politics. And then he said, politics is good for you only in the United States, but not in Hawaii, not in the islands. And then he said, what is the word you want to tell me? 3 words. You want to give back the word to me when you die. I thought he forgot that, but he remembered that 3 words. Sorry, thank you. I appreciate the last word he said to me. I'm going to give it to you at the end of my life. After 3 years, 4 years, we've been in Oakland. We moved to my place for 1 year. And then we get back to where he lived. I make arrangement. I'm sorry, my uncle's supposed to be here at 1 o'clock, but his flight is delayed from Hawaii over here. I'm gonna kill him when he arrives. Because he is the one who do my speech. That's why I didn't write anything. He's the one pay our fare in the first trip for me and Bill to go to Hawaii on his birthday. And he's so bright. He learned a lot from Bill, politics. And I said, why you learn politics? You never grow up with politics. You learn religion. And he said to me, good to know because I live in the United States now. And I said, are you gonna be a politics man? And he said, I love to talk to Bill all the time. And then I said, yeah, we're gonna come again. We went to Hawaii again for his birthday again. He is proud of going to Hawaii. And I told my uncle, we have no money, you're gonna pay our fare again? And he said, I'd be glad to do that. I love this man, and I love to bring him to Hawaii again. We didn't go to where we used to live in Maui, we go to Kauai. Because we like Kauai, it's only 3 hours round in that island. And that's what happened. When me and Bill getting know each other more, he getting back and he understand I am a religion person. Every night when we have to do Lord's Prayer, he said to me, I'm not a religion person. I said, if you're not, or like it or not, shut up. And we have to go follow what I pray for. Finally, last year in September, in July, I went home because I need to do things to my land. And then I said, Bill, I am going home. And he said, put me in, with me and you go. And I said, the only thing, I don't have the money. If I ask to my uncle, they're gonna cancel our trip to Hawaii next year. For this year, for his 100th birthday. And that's why I go alone. And he stayed with my daughter. When I came, he turned to my daughter more than me. And he said, you left me, I'm turned to Rosa. Every time I said, I got to take you out and we go for dinner. He said he never forget his best friend, James Ben. I'm appreciate you. Everything we asked, he asked for James Ben. I said, why you ask for James Ben instead your children? And then he said, because that's the only friend is around me. And I'm appreciated. And then when Bob come, and then I said, who is this guy? It looked like my brother. I said, no, you're wrong. Look at again. Oh, that's my son Bob. And then everyone, when Phyllis and Dave come, I asked, you never forget your own children. And after they left, they said, it's okay, Alini. I love you, and I'm thank you. I'm appreciate, and I'm sorry. That the word is thank you. This is the third word. He always keep it in his mind. But I'm gonna talk now for the 3 days before Thanksgiving. It really shocked me. We're gonna go through that. But he is dead to Jesus Christ. Before we have Lord's Prayer, on Monday, this man gave me a signal. I prayed for signal for Bill. Bill said, I see the light. Did you see the light? No, I don't. And he said, I raised my hand, I couldn't reach the light. I put it down. 3 times on a Monday, before 2 more days to Thanksgiving. Tuesday, I said, I'll go shopping to get our Thanksgiving dinner. What do you want? You want turkey? No, I don't like turkey. I said, what do you want? Seafood. Okay, I go, what kind of seafood? I know he's gonna tell me he like oyster. He said, oyster and shrimp. That's what I get, oyster and shrimp. And I said, I'm back with our shopping. But he looked at me, he said, that's a nice dinner for Thanksgiving. I said, I'm gonna give you an oyster today because I buy it fresh today. So Tuesday, after dinner, he said to me, turn around on, I put him in a wheelchair, and he said to me, Alini, thank you so much to take good care of me. I said, why you say that? Are you gonna die? Everybody can go through that. And I said, what are you looking up for? The light is coming again. I said, this is the second time the light come on Tuesday. And all of a sudden, he said to me, I'm thankful for your daughter. She take good care of me. And I said, thank you very much of you to say that. I remember the day you told me those 3 words, you're gonna give it back to me. Now you did. That memory, never forget in this man. He said it to me on 24 in the morning, when before Mass. I am really shocked. And then he said, are you in pain? No, I am. I'm not in pain at all. I'm comfortable. You can kiss me as much as you can. But you know, I am comfortable. At 24, on a morning on 24, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:15. I see the light show up. I didn't see the light, but I see the hand. It's raising. I said, I'm gonna help you to reach the light. And he raised his hand up, and I hold it. I said, you can drop down when you're tired. The minute he dropped down, the breath is over. This is the last of him. I miss him so much. We have a lot of things we play with, but remember, I'm not a politics. To talk politics in his, because this is the life where Bill is shared to be Holy Spirit and take his life over. At the same time, he reached for the light. That's his name. I love you guys. And mahalo.
I wanted to speak after Eileen because we wanted to thank her so much for what she's. She helped Dad. Our job in the last 10 years as his children was to help him lead a new life, and a life completely divorced from what his life had been, a life which many of you are familiar with. And Eileen's love and attention, Eileen teaching him not to be humiliated as the body failed, those things are beyond words in value. And they helped Bill so that he did indeed have 10 more good, full years, different years, and he died in peace. And before I want to talk some about the family, but before I do, I just wanted to say, watching the QAC film, my childhood friend David Schooley is here. And I don't know if anyone else in the room was there, but David was one of the people watched down the stairs when I was brought in to watch Bill give them help. So thank you. And other things, because our generation has been involved on so many fronts. I just want to say, for those of you who don't know, when you look across the bay, either from SF, well, it's hard from SF, from here, and you see San Bruno Mountain, and you see that San Bruno Mountain is still naked on top, thank God. This brother and the group that he founded has been going at it for 30 years, 40 years. That's why that mountain is home to butterflies and all sorts of things that we as human beings care about. So thank you, David. So, is that me? No.
This is a test.
Go ahead, Bob.
Whatever.
It'll go away.
Yeah.
Sounds like a teapot.
It does. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, Dave and Phyllis would have their own tales to tell of the things they did with Dad. I want to talk a little bit about what happened right after Mom died, and in the context of him having been purged from KPFA. My wife Cheryl and I took Dad to Alaska, where he'd never been. And then 2 years later, we went to Europe, and we brought him over to Europe, to Bath, and then into London for Shakespeare and music. And in the the summer just before Mom died, and a couple of summers after, when I was teaching summer schools in Oakland, Bill and I would meet every day after school at Lake Temescal and swim. And Mom and Dad were lifelong, phenomenal swimmers. I mean, they loved it. After the car accident, Dad wanted to die. And we talked about, should he give it up? And we made an agreement. And the agreement was that I would get hold of a friend of mine who's a doctor out of state and get the medicine so that he could commit suicide. And he would give it a year to see if he recovered enough so that he actually wanted to live. And I did, and he did. And thanks to Eileen, and he had a life. We regularly went to the San Francisco Academy of Music, which has performances by senior students and their professors, and we did that once a month for years. We went to watch opera on the big screen at ANC in Emeryville, because Mom and Dad loved opera. So we went to opera. There was not, I think, a week in the last 8 years that Dave or Phyllis or I didn't take Bill on an hours-long drive through near or far California. And some of you may have experienced Dad as a great tour guide. When we were kids, when we got our first car, which was a Kaiser, and how many of you remember that Kaiser made Kaisers? Kaiser made Kaisers. And we first got it, and Dad started driving around New York State. It got instilled in us. My favorite rides from the last couple of years, my stepson, Al, who lives in Illinois, and Bill and I got caught in a whiteout in Feather River and took refuge in an empty Chinese restaurant on New Year's Eve. Where did Jews go? I mean, another favorite ride, he and I went to Yosemite last April for an overnight, and there are some wonderful photographs of him for the 500th time in his life, but always loved, sitting there looking at Bridal Veil Falls.
That's not it.
That is not Bridal Veil Falls.
But it's certainly not. And then most recently to Point Reyes with my wife's son David, again and again, and through a ride over to Martinez, the back way, an area that Bill always said, oh, this is a really wooded area. And last time I tried to go there about 2 weeks ago, I just started crying because he's been in the passenger seat for the last 8 years. So Dave, you can tell me when to stop. I wanted to talk about some of the memories from the early years, some good and some not so good. Bill was a hero, but Bill was under huge pressure. And there were many times that he raged at family, and it did damage to all of us. And if you read the autobiography, pages 259 and 260, which he put in basically at my insistence, he dealt honestly and thoughtfully with the stuff that happened. And years later, he said to me about McCarthy, he said, and this is just about literally a quote, he said, "You know, I realized I'd cut off his balls, and I was so scared, I hid in the house for 3 days. I didn't go outside." Heroism doesn't just come like that, right? Somebody, James or someone earlier, said that it was his rage, in the positive sense, against inhumanity that allowed him to stand up. But there was fear, and he talked to me a number of times about the fear that he couldn't stand up to torture. And every one of us in this room who's given our lives to the fight for social change, you know, Abu Ghraib is not the exception in American history. So, there are the great memories, the memories of us singing songs every night. There was a division of labor in that house. Mom cooked, Phyllis, if I remember correctly, washed the dishes, I dried the dishes, Dave put the dishes away, and Bill taught us songs that we all sang while we were doing it. And Bill taught me scholarship, and I think it's the greatest thing he ever taught me. He taught me to be truthful, to research before you talk, to look at your sources and double check them before you cite them, not to embellish, but to stick to facts. And that also was one of the reasons that my split with Bill, which lasted for 10 years, we didn't talk to each other for 10 years, was so difficult. Bill sent me to the Soviet Union in 1969 because he was afraid I was becoming a Maoist. And good. And Liz, you will appreciate that in particular. He wanted me to see the Soviet Union. Anyway, I went with an interracial group of 30 people led by the Communist Party. And the trip started in New York. New York was in the midst of a mini race riot. And when you got on the subways, people were afraid and pressed back against the doors and just looking at each other because nobody knew who was going to hurt whom. And we had dinner in Harlem, and when we walked from the restaurant to the subway, a group of young black people followed us and threw garbage at us. And that was New York. And then we landed in Moscow, and every nationality imaginable, every style of clothing, I couldn't believe it. Well, you know, the Soviet Union was 15 republics. The Soviet Union had over 130 language groups. I was just blown away. I had worked for SNCC. I'd worked with the Panthers. I could not believe what I saw, that people were getting along like that. And then we had a conference with the Komsomol. And at a certain point I got up and I said, why is Brezhnev inviting Nixon to Moscow to talk now when Nixon and Kissinger are bombing Haifa? I understand the need to not have nuclear war, but why are you inviting him to Moscow now when he's trying to drown the population of an entire city to win that war? And in the next couple of days, people who wanted to deal with that question seriously took me into open fields, took me onto the back of buses, noisy old gas buses, and they yelled in my ear, or they whispered in my ear, and not a one of them was an anti-communist. They all believed in socialism, and every one of them was afraid of the secret police. And when I left the Soviet Union, I knew that I had not seen fish, and I had not seen fowl. That I had seen something that was not capitalism and something that was not democratic socialism. So I put myself in a corner for 6 months, and I took Lenin off the bookcase, and I read for 6 months on everything I could think about. And when that, I read on the woman question, the national question, trade union independence, united fronts. And then I took a book of Trotsky's off the shelf, and I read it, and I decided that those two thinkers were relevant to the battles of the 60s and the revolution that many of us were trying to make. So I was out to dinner with Bill and Tanya. We were eating at Laval's Pizza at the foot of Euclid. And I turned to them at some point and I said a very short version of that. And I said, I'm going to join a Trotskyist organization. How many of you ever saw the movie The Exorcist? You get it. And this is, thank you for laughing. And, you know, I'm glad I'm able to say this after all the good things that Bill and I have shared in the last 2 decades. Bill flipped. Bill called me a MF in front of my mother. Bill cursed me for 30 solid minutes using every expletive he knew, and we didn't talk to each other for the next 10 years. And that difference simmered. It simmered, that will be done very soon. It simmered. One time he asked me to substitute for him on the air. He was incensed by the questions I asked to the guests. It simmered in near work. And we finally made our peace with each other. And I can't say that I could be happier or prouder to have had anyone as my father or my mother than Bill at the time. Thank you.
Amen. You never saw a less religious person in your life, by the way, who went at the microphone right now. So we're supposed to say something about our parents, right? And I'm a joker. And I was also the third child. And any of you that know anything about psychology know that the third child is the avoider, the one who sort of escapes from all the stuff that the oldest and then the second oldest got to deal with. So I'm a clown and I'm a musician and a songwriter and sometimes a very, very serious person, and I'm very political. I just don't put it out in front of me the way Bob and Phyllis have through their lives. I want to tell you some other aspects of Bill. I want to tell you that from my standpoint, no matter what he went through, and remember this was a time when the woman in the relationship raised the children. Maybe it shouldn't have been that way, but that's the way it was. Tanya was the person that raised us and took care of us and fed us and clothed us. But Bill, no matter what was going on, there was always a roof over our heads. We always had decent clothing. We always had good food on the table. Maybe not filet mignon, but we always had food on the table. Bill was a good provider. I asked Bill about maybe 6 or 5 years ago on one of our endless rides, "Did you want kids?" And he said, "No, not really." I said, "Why did you have them?" Well, he thought about it for a second. He said, it's what people did. You know? So I appreciate that. It was an honest answer. On another occasion, when he and Tanya and I were sitting at what was then known as Monarch Place, I believe, Claremont House. They had moved down off the hill because Tanya was at the point where she really couldn't mobilize and get over even to a bus stop to get downtown. So they were now living down the hill. And we were sitting there and he was going on about something in the autobiography, and I said, "Bill, why, when you got to the 1970s in the autobiography, why did you have to go off in these tangents about how Langston Hughes thought you would be a great poet, and so thought you would have been a great ballet dancer, and somebody else thought you would have been a great something else? You've done a lot of great things. How many great people do you have to be?" And for the first time ever in my life, and he never said it again, he said, "Maybe it's because I have no self-confidence." And I thought that was pretty interesting coming from Bill Mandel. So what other little things will I tell you? And I want to be really fast because we have a lot of people that would like to tell you about Bill Mandel. Bill Mandel loved any dead-end road. Seriously, if the tinier the road was, the more poorly paved it was, that's the road we were going to go down on that Sunday drive. And very frequently, the end of the road was pretty boring, but every now and then you found things like peacock farms, covered wooden bridges nobody knew existed in California. I mean, Bill was an explorer, and he thrived on that. That was one of his deepest loves, was to go where he had not trodden before. Always fun. When he sang, even though I became a musician completely on my own impetus and not because Bill in any way encouraged me, he had a strong voice and a good voice, and what I learned from him was sing with your whole soul. He belted it out, and it was just a lot of fun when we were kids, and we had the Fireside songbook and every imaginable Lefty songbook, and we sang them all. There was generally a piano in the house. Bill was actually a very decent piano player when we were younger. So there was a lot of music in the house, and that really moved me to where my life ended up. Play ball. Some of you may have noticed the nice tin sign over there of Babe Ruth. And Bob didn't have a chance to tell you that Bill is the only person he knows who actually saw Babe Ruth play. Bill taught us to play baseball. I don't know that he ever taught Phyllis to play baseball. Bill was a man of his time, a little bit of a male chauvinist, but...
He played ball with me, though. He played ball with me, though.
Oh, did he play ball with you guys? Okay, good. So the generations brought something new out of it. That's a good sign.
He tried to teach me how to play.
Well, that's an appropriate statement because he tried to teach me. He actually did succeed in teaching me to keep my eye on the ball. So that's a great lesson as one goes through life, isn't it? Now, there was one other thing, and it mainly came from Tanya in terms of dealing with how we did in school. She was the one that really watched the report card. She was the one that talked to us about school. I've said this to Bob and Phyllis before. They seemed a little startled. But to me, the greatest lesson that I got from Bill and Tanya was something Barack Obama used well but never stuck with it. They said to me, "Yes, you can. You're intelligent. You can do it." They taught me that I could live, and I thank them for that. Is Gwen here? Yes. Gwen. Gigi, where? Oh, there she is.
Does that work? Okay, well, my mom and dad were communists of the 20s and 30s, and they told me early on about Bill and about HUAC and so on, and I followed him on KPFA. Now, I became one of the first women electricians in 1977 in Sacramento, and there was a Women in the Trades thing went on in San Francisco, and I went to it. And I got on the committee for the Soviet Union, because I was sort of, I kept listening to Bill and all this stuff, and they wanted me to take tradeswomen to the Soviet Union and meet our counterparts. So I said, yeah, that'd be great, I'll lead it, Okay, I'll do it. So I thought, I need to talk to Bill Mandel about that. Now, I never had met him, but I talked to him, I called the station, KPFA. Yeah, he'd help me, and he helped me take 6 tours to the Soviet Union, lead. They were tradeswomen were the first 2, and then there was just like working women, and then, and I don't know that guy's name, but he was always at all our stuff. Hi. Anyway, I used to know his name and I forgot it, but anyway, so, Bill helped me by putting all these names together for me to visit when I'm there. And I had a minor in Russian, so I could speak sort of Russian, not that well. But as I went, each time I got a little better. But I went to probably about 30, 40, I don't know how many cities. I went to more cities. When I talk to Russians in this country, they say, I've never been to those. So, I was all over Central Asia. I was in all over Russia, and then I was over in the East too, and so on. And he helped me each time, and I'd go to see the people whose names he gave me. And he'd say, most of them speak English, but it isn't true. Only a couple spoke English. And so I had to use my Russian, and it really helped me to learn it. But I just want to say, he helped me a real lot with that. It was just wonderful. We became very good friends. I knew him all the 80s. That was me and Bill Mandel's, the time I met him and got to know him really well. But what I wanted to say about the Soviet Union, I don't know about when people went in the past and everything. I was in Progressive Labor Party in the 60s. I was a radical. Oh, my dad and mom gave up on me. That was it. But anyway, I didn't like the Soviet Union at all. They were total revisionists, whatever. But then I kept listening to Bill, and I thought, damn, I want to go see some. In the 80s, things were really changing over there. And I'm really surprised. I don't know who sold them out or what happened in the 90s, but they were really in good shape in the 80s. There was nobody, I was in the cities everywhere. People looked good, they dressed good, they ate good, they were smiling, they were happy. Only thing is, whenever I talk to them, they always say they wanted to come to the US because in the US, they live like, the streets are paved with gold. You live in big houses. And I said, yeah, well, a lot of people are living on the street. And they say, you're listening to Izvestia, You don't know, that's not true, not in the US. So, people had this belief, but yet they were living pretty darn good, and they were living better every year. But anyway, that all went away. But I just basically wanted to, follow through. I'm trying to think of what, I know. I want to sing this song, it's not very long. I think Bill would have loved it. I wanted to go see him. I talked to Bob, last month or so, and he said, he's not up to it. Before he died, I couldn't go see him because he wasn't willing. But anyway, I wrote this song. I wrote the words. You'll probably recognize the tune. But I think Bill would love it. That's close enough. Good enough. That's good. Oh, the Arabs and the Jewish should be friends. Oh, the Arabs and the Jewish should be friends. Some of us, we hate the wall. Others of us, we want it all. But that's no reason why we can't be friends. Oh, Middle Eastern folks should stick together. Middle Eastern folks should all be pals. Jews should dance with the Arab daughters. Millers and folks should stick together. Millers and folks should all be pals. Jews should dance with the Arab daughters. Arabs dance with the Jewish gals. All the Arabs and the Jewish should be friends. All the Arabs and the Jewish should be friends. We should all have equal rights. After all, we're all Semites, and there's no reason why we can't be friends. Oh, Millers and folks should stick together. Millers and folks should all be pals. Jews should dance with the Arab daughters. Arabs dance with the Jewish gals.
Since Gigi transitioned us to music, Joe, please.
Joe, you're going to tell the story first. Okay.
Esther and I met Bill and Tanya in a very unique way. We had just come up from Southern California in 1969 to get a job at Diablo Valley College where I taught history. And we began to listen to KPFA radio, and there was Bill Mandel. And they had one of their fund drives. And one of the incentives during a fund drive was that Bill Mandel would come to your house and if you want to invite guests, he would talk or just schmooze, whatever you wanted. And so we thought that'd be a great idea. And so that's how we met. Bill and Tanya came along too. That's how we met Bill and Tanya. And Bill loved to sing, as we know. And what I'd like to do is to sing two songs, a Jewish song and a Russian song. The Russian song, Bill taught me, and it's got a wonderfully interesting history behind it. And the Jewish song is an old traditional song, and Bill loved to sing it in Yiddish with me. Tum balalaika. The balalaika is, as we all know, the Russian instrument that's shaped like a triangle and has 3 strings. Actually sounds more like a mandolin. And it comes from an old tradition where you ask questions. It's a riddle song of people who are courting with each other. And this wonderful courting song, Bill and I used to sing together. I handed out to you some of the papers with the words on them. If some people don't have them, would you raise your hand? My wife will come around and hand them to you.
Oh, mimeograph.
If you don't have or want to sing all the words, just sing it in English first and then in Yiddish. At least sing the chorus with me. Tumbala, 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 laika, tumbala, 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 laika, tumbala, laika, lebala, laika, tumbala, laika, happy are we. A young lad was thinking all night, would it be wrong? Or would it be right? Should he declare his love? Dare he choose? Would she accept or would she refuse? Tumbala, 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 laika, tumbala, 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 laika, tumbala, Silly young lad, why ask again? A stone can grow without rain. Love can burn for many long years. The heart can yearn and cry without tears. Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala laika. Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala laika. Tumbala laika, play bala laika. Tumbala laika, happy are we. Now in Yiddish. Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala laika. Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala laika. Tumbala laika, spielbala laika. Tumbala laika, treurig zal zijn. Steht am Bocher, steht und wacht und wacht, a ganze Nacht. Weinen zu nehmen und nicht verschämen. Weinen zu nehmen und nicht verschämen. Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala laika. Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala laika. Tumbala laika, spielbala laika. Tumbala laika, wer soll sein? Mädel, Mädel, wil dir etwas fragen? Was kann wachsen und regen? Was kann brennen und keinmal aufhören? Was kann bänken, weinen und werden? Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala laika. Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala laika. Tumbala laika, spielbala laika. Tumbala laika, wer wird so sein? Narische Bocher, was darfst du fragen? A Stein kann wachsen und regen. Lieber kann brennen und keinmal aufhören. A Herz kann bänken, weinen und werden. Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala laika. Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala laika. Tumbala laika, spielbala laika. Tumbala laika, Freude soll sein. Thank you so much for joining me. This Russian song, Bill taught me. During the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States, when it looked like there's a possibility of having a nuclear war, Bill said that in the first day of school, in the school year, every year, the children all across the whole country would have a unit on peace. And so children would write essays, they'd write poems, they draw pictures, they paint paintings, they discuss. One little boy, about 6 years of age, painted a kind of painting that a little boy would do, a little child would do. A big, big, big blue sky with a big yellow sun in the middle of that blue sky, and a little boy and his mother holding hands, walking underneath the sun. And the boy dictated these words to his teacher. May there always be sunshine. May there always be blue skies. May there always be mama. May there always be me. Those words were made into a chorus of a larger song. Bill had a time, I don't speak Russian, getting me to speak it in Russian. Pust всегда будет солнце, пусть всегда будет небо, пусть всегда будет мама, пусть всегда буду я. So, it's on the paper. We'll sing it twice in Russian, and then twice in English, and then twice back in Russian. Sosa, pusförsäkta budgetgivare, pusförsäkta budgetmamma, pusförsäkta budjagen, pusförsäkta budgetsosa, pusförsäkta budgetgivare, pusförsäkta budgetmamma, pusförsäkta budja. May there always be sunshine, may there always be blue skies, may there always be mama, may there always be me again, may there always be sunshine, may there always be blue skies, may there always be mama, may there always be me. Pusförsäkta budgetsosa, pusförsäkta budgetgivare, pusförsäkta budgetmamma, pusförsäkta budja, pusförsäkta budgetsosa, pusförsäkta budgetgivare, pusförsäkta budgetmamma, pusförsäkta budja.
Thank you so much. This is 2 or 3 minutes for people to grab food, but with both hands, as Bill would do it. Always grab the mic with both hands.
Was the start of one romance after another, and beautiful flowers and wonderful things. She had turban? No, she was right for that.
About short to be an officer.
That's fine. Good to see you.
When I'm there,
It's like a pickup.
I hope you're all comfortable eating a nice repast here. My name is Jeff Blankford. Among other things I've done, I was a founder of the original and only legitimate Save KPFA organization in 1993. When I discovered at a staff meeting at KPFA that Pacifica had made grant applications to 3 of the largest foundations in the United States, Pew, Ford, and MacArthur. And so Werner Hertz, who's no longer with us, and I was at that meeting. We formed Save KPFA. And in 1995, when Bill Mandel was taken off the air, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about, Mariah Gallardon, who was here somewhere, who was fired from KPFA, we formed Take Back KPFA. Now I want to say I first heard of Bill Mandel long before I met him, because my father, who was a blacklisted writer and also a very unfriendly witness before HUAC in Los Angeles in 1951, used to go and get authors to sign books to me. And one of those books was a book called Soviet Russia Since the War by William Mandel. And I have another book on my library shelf called Saying No to Power, signed to me directly by Bill, in which he called me in the book the most persistent defender or critic of KPFA, which I was for a while, and I was joined by a number of other people. I wanted to tell you about an incident which characterized Bill and characterized, unfortunately, KPFA at the time. Bill had a Sunday show, but every Wednesday morning he would have a segment on the morning show in which he would talk about Eastern Europe and Russia and what was happening there. But one morning in the Chronicle, he saw an article, as I did, by Art Hoppe,
the liberal columnist of the Chronicle, a vicious attack on affirmative action. An unbelievable attack, racist attack by Hoppe on affirmative action. And Bill was a very principled anti-racist. And it didn't matter what the venue was, he was going to take this opportunity to speak about Art Hoppe's racism, which was more important for him, and in reality, than what he was going to say about Eastern Europe and Russia. So he spoke and criticized Art Hoppe, and he took Art Hoppe's column apart, and you could find it in the book, I think page 376 to 77. And as a result of that, he got a letter from the program director of KPFA, removing him from the air for violating his agreement on what he was going to talk about. That was one of the low moments of KPFA, of which those who supported the station are not here today. I didn't expect to see them. Because he did not get support from the staff. This man who had given 37 years of his life to educating people, giving residents of this area a unique perspective that people around the country were not able to get. Their way of showing appreciation was to kick him off the air, and there was no solidarity on the part of the staff members. And it needs to be known. And so in terms of, so Bill then came to the station one day, right afterward, and there was a large demonstration of people picketing the station, protesting the firing of Bill. Ronnie Davis of the Mime Troupe was there with a trumpet. It was there's someone there with a toilet bowl. It was a very colorful demonstration. And if people had smartphones, then like they have today, it would have gone viral on YouTube. But Bill still had his Sunday program. So we made an agreement that he would go on the air the second Sunday and tell the listeners why he was no longer on the air, because KPFA management, program director, so on, did not tell the public, did not tell the listeners what was going on. And then Bill gave out my phone number for people to call with questions. And so after Bill went on the air on that Sunday night and explained how he had been removed from his Wednesday morning broadcast, he of course was then removed from the air completely after that. And there was no effort, as far as I know, to ever make amends to him for what they did to him. But what they were doing, and you could call me a conspiracy theorist, but there's quite a bit of evidence to the effect. This was a government operation targeting Pacifica, understandably targeting Pacifica, because it was the only national network that told the truth or tried to tell the truth about what was going on in the country. And so they wanted to NPRize it, and if they could get away with firing Bill Mandel here at KPFA, they could fire anybody. And not long thereafter, some months afterward, there was a mass purge of programmers, left programmers, radical programmers, and they brought in, well, none other than Jerry Brown. As a matter of fact, if Jerry Brown had not been brought in to do a daily 1-hour program on KPFA, he might not be governor today. But that's positive or negative, I don't know. But he should send a lot of money to KPFA because they promoted him to be what he is today. But this was the beginning of a long fight. Many of you were involved with that. In '99, the station was locked down. They got African American front people to do the dirty work, like Mary Frances Berry. First it was Pat Scott. Before that, who was the one who was really behind the operations here. And when she retired, she got a letter of commendation from Robert Coonrod, who was the former head of Voice of America and Radio Marti. That was the Voice of America program for Cuba. Any questions about Pat Scott should have been answered then. In any case, Bill was going to be the sacrifice for the beginning of this attempt to strangle and destroy Pacifica Radio. And his voice being taken off the air was a tremendous loss. And I would say that there have been very few individuals in this area, country, who have contributed more to waking people up and making them think than did Bill Mandel. And listening to people talk about it today, I'm really happy to be here to share those memories and listen to those memories of someone who I really respected. Thank you very much.
I just need to remind everyone once again, and this is the perfect time to do it, that Amy's sitting here recording this whole event for KPFA. And I assure you that the Mandel children, being Bill and Tanya's kids, had some second thoughts about that, considering what you just heard. However, we decided in the end, well, it's all about free speech, and KPFA is going to be here, and they're welcome to record it, and it's not the same KPFA it was then. I'm not sure what it is anymore, frankly, but I do need to remind you that if you come up and speak, if you're willing to let KPFA use your sound, the sound recording of what you say, you need to come to that table and sign the release form. Please don't forget to do that. Thank you.
So this isn't the list, this is just yours covering.
Laura's going to speak next, but before she does, I wanted to say something. Laura X, long time friend of my family and of Bill's, is going to speak next.
Oh, I know her.
But before she does, I want to say something about the KPFA issue. I was very upset when they kicked Bill off the air. They kicked Mama O'Shea off the air. They kicked a whole bunch of other people off the air. I think it was a reflection of how people felt at the time about the Soviet Union, amongst other things, and therefore how they felt about, anybody of Bill's generation who might have been friendly in any way, and that was part of it. I don't see KPFA as the same organization today, and I'm glad that they're here and recording it. And then I wanted to just read one other thing, and then I'm going to call Laura. This is from Michael Lerner, Rabbi Lerner. And as you heard from two different people here with totally different attitudes about religion, Eileen is a very religious person, as you got. My brother Dave is as anti-religious as you can get. And my feeling about Bill, who swore on a stack of Communist manifestos that he was an atheist, and as far as I'm concerned, treated that in a very religious way. And because I think that his generation in particular, certain numbers of he was a first-generation American, a certain number of Jewish Americans of that generation wanted to be assimilated. And Bill had a great deal of difficulty dealing with his in-laws who were Yiddishists. Yiddishists are Jewish people who are interested in the culture and who are not religious people. However, an interesting fact is that if you get to know many of them, including Bill was a patriarch in the true sense of the word, and if you ever told him that, he'd say to you, absolutely not, but he was. That's my experience as his daughter. So, and his attitude about practicing anything that sounded to him like religion made me extremely angry at him and uncomfortable about it, because my mother was very much a Yiddishist. So when Michael Lerner sent this, I am extremely grateful to him for it. Dear Phyllis, Bob, and Dave, I am so disappointed that I can't get to the event this Saturday honoring Bill. I had the utmost respect for Bill and the integrity with which he pursued his political views, often quite different from me, at least in the days when he was a defender of the Soviet Union. I love the fact that he would stand for his views and defend them when it seemed as if the whole world was against those views. I know how hard that is to do, and in the last few decades, when we shared a strong critique of Israeli policies toward Palestinians, strengthened the appreciation I had for his whole life. I have said Kaddish in his memory. Thank you, Rabbi Lerner. Warm regards, Michael Rabbi Lerner, editor of Tikkun magazine. Now, Laura.
I'm very, very honored to have been asked to speak. I said no way. I went blank with fright. I haven't recovered from Tanya's memorial either. But then the memories started coming back. And so, as I just said to Phyllis, I cheated. I went back to his books to see the documentation of our amazing argumentative relationship. But first I promised Anne Fagan Ginger, whom I had the honor of bringing here today, giving her a ride, to announce that she has a paid position with no less than her about human rights and the 100 human rights that we have, the book she's doing now. And so she needs help for the next 3 weeks in terms of doing research and typing and editing at the Michelson Institute. So Anne is right here, and so go up to her after, or call it, because it's important. Okay, I have nicknamed this series of backstories about Bill et moi an ode to dialectical production of materials. I first encountered Bill while listening to his program on KPFA's daughter station, WBAI, when I lived in New York at the top of the 60s. I had declared myself a socialist to my Republican father at 15 and had been studying in New York with Carl Niebel, later to be the namesake of the Niebel-Proctor Library here on Telegraph. Though I moved to Berkeley in 1963 and didn't meet him until I went up to his house in early '67 to pick up his newest edition of Russia Re-Examined as a premium for a KPFA donation, I had been studying Soviet cultural geography at UCB in 1966 or so, and Russian at Berlitz as I was going to the Soviet Union to spend the summer of the 50th anniversary of the revolution, there with my Soviet boyfriend from the oceanography ship they led in the San Francisco Bay in January of 1967. Tanya and Bill laughed at me when I asked if a bikini was appropriate swim attire, which began a long tradition of laughing at me. They came to my weekly Soviet classic music movies at my house, which were borrowed from the UC Extension with a projector for free, which began a long tradition of attending Soviet films and other films, probably hundreds of them, together once or twice a week. We never settled our argument over Konchalovsky's first film, The First Teacher, about whether or not the teacher should chop down the tree to build the first school in the village in Central Asia. February 1969, Bill introduced me to International Women's Day on his show on the Soviet press and periodicals back in New York. He read regularly from the Soviet press on International Women's Day. His daughter, Phyllis, a longtime activist, that is a short term she gave me. For her, there is so much more. Took me to the Berkeley Women's Liberation Group, which then organized the first street demonstration about International Women's Day since 1947 in this country. Many of us dressed up as women in history from my list of women in world history that he had helped extensively for me to create, with women on it who were heroes to him as an American and as an American communist. In my original hat from the USSR, I was a cross between Alexandra Kollontai, the Bolshevik feminist, and Isadora Duncan, the American woman who lived for a time in Russia and formed the world of dance away from the confines of the ballet. There's, by the way, a photo of Phyllis at that demonstration there on the, I don't know what you call it, where everything is pasted onto a hard piece, where lots of little photos are that are great. Okay, so, oops, I hope I don't have this out of order. Okay, this is too bad. In 1972, no wait, something's wrong, sorry. Sorry, folks. Okay, there we go. On September 17th of 1969, which ironically became Constitution Day in 2004, Bill was reading from the Soviet press that one of the most so-called backward republics, in one of the most so-called backward republics, the women had finally caught up with keeping up their birth names when they got married, which was something that had been started regularly by the Bolshevik women at the time of the revolution. I called in, and Bill often said he invented the call-in show on radio, and I said that the Bolsheviks could have done better than to have a woman keep her father's name. He said he didn't think they had done anything better. And I said I was so disappointed that I would call myself Laura X until I thought of a new name. As with Malcolm X, our history had been stolen from us, and we have to carry our slave owners' names in the patriarchy. From April to December 1969, he contributed regular outraged postcards to Spasm, which was the only women's liberation newsletter at that time nationally, which our library published. We pasted it into that proto-zine and photocopied and responded to his postcards with some grace and sometimes more outrage. The Sofia Perovskaya the Sofia Perovskaya and Alexander, I think it's Andrei, actually, Zhelyabov Memorial Society for People's Freedom Through Women's Liberation is what the word spasm stood for. Bill had taught me about the 16-year-old young woman, the daughter of the governor of St. Petersburg, who killed the Tsar with her lover on March 13, 1881. I didn't approve of the killing, but I loved that they were comrades and lovers. In 1972, Bill helped at the Women's History Library with the book Films and/or About Women, Internationally Past and Present, by contributing information on Soviet women in film, and there was a woman on the cover of the book as well, which is a still from one of the films. I think it's Until Monday. And he coined the term filmically, which is the way he said, I think. He contributed so much to our book, Female Artists Past and Present, that we had to do a special supplement just of the materials he gave us. These efforts were the first acquisitions of such books by the National Museum of Women in the Arts, now celebrating their 30th anniversary. In 1975, he wrote in the intro to Soviet Women, my deepest gratitude goes to my wife, Tanya, and to Laura X of the Women's History Research Library in Berkeley. Laura is responsible for having shaken me loose in endless discussions and arguments from long-established assumptions about what the liberation of women really means, and for having caused me, as I undertook this work, to pose and seek answers to questions that would not otherwise have occurred to me. In terms of finding materials I asked for, volunteering materials I didn't ask for, but know now that I damn well had to learn about, writing page-by-page critiques, probably not much shorter in all than the book itself, and sharing perceptions of Roan's visit to the USSR. She was helpful in a manner that is beyond praise. I think I should have died then. You know, you can't do better than that. But that was a while ago. In 1976, I was having breakfast at their house after some event. I used to stay over after we went out sometimes. And Herb Cain in the Chronicle mentioned that CBS and the right-wing radio station were about to take my favorite music radio station off the air. I was so upset that Tanya and Bill were laughing at me. Why do you like all that old music? Well, I said, you like Beethoven. And then they told me that Bob would sing songs from Naughty Marietta while drying the dishes. So I felt better. I liked all that, quote, old music, all the jazz through the 20s to 1952, so much that my interns and I instantly launched the campaign to save KMPX and kept it on the air for 2 years. With the help of Tanya and Bill coming to the benefit concerts and Bill dancing the swing for all, as a model for all. In 1978, Christmas Day, after I stayed at their house after they took me to a Christmas Carol show at a cafe in Oakland, we read in the Chronicle that a woman in Salem, Oregon, named Greta Rideout had accused her husband of raping her at a time when they lived together. This was the first case in our country where such a prosecution could take place, and yet the prosecutor was really on the side of the defense. In his statement to the press pre-trial, he said, if it had happened in the bedroom and he didn't beat her up, I'd be on the other side. They were both so dismissive, and I got so upset that I called the Rape Crisis Center that minute Christmas morning to offer my assistance, and ended up coordinating the try this one again, and ended up coordinating the campaign in California and 45 other states to eliminate the special privilege to rape one's wife and girlfriends. To their credit, both Tanya and Bill became very supportive, and we won in 1993. In 1985, meanwhile, my library staff and I also worked for over a year on editing Soviet but not Russian, which is great fun for me as an anthropology grad. The most detailed criticism, this is a quote from his intro, the most detailed criticisms by others are those of Laura X, as she is publicly known, my son David, Dr. Shura and Sidney Saul, and Stephen Dunn, Dr. Stephen Dunn. And I remember that there was a phrase, mountain fastness, in this book, which I'd never heard before. So I suggested they take it out. Oh God, my foolishness. And the current definition calls it poetical, for a secure stronghold in the mountains. And Bill loved poetry. I am so grateful for their introducing me regularly to theater and art, and Robeson in particular. In 1999, from his autobiography, the first to suggest that I write an autobiography were my colleagues of the late 1960s on the editorial board of the movement, organ of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, who were struck by my activities in the South before the Civil Rights Movement. In 1969, the same suggestion was made by pioneering second-wave feminist Laura X because of what she had learned of my life and provided her with information about female activists of the Great Depression and World War II years. The idea also arose out of listening to my radio broadcast, from which she had found out about the existence of International Women's Day, then unknown to her generation. They refused to believe me about the existence of a progressive party, Teddy Roosevelt's founding of a third party in 1912, refused even to look it up. But the funniest argument was watching the 1994 Olympics in Norway. And the women's bobsled captain called out to her crew, "Come on guys, let's go." And he started complaining seriously and sincerely that she had taken away his birthright as a guy. I lost that argument, but he was quite a guy nonetheless, and I miss them both so very much. They were basically ever so necessary parents to me.
Okay, before we go any further, I want to thank Redwood Gardens resident Eleanor Walden for getting us this place today.
We are not worthy.
Is Barbara Dane here? Barbara, are you here? No. I guess she didn't get here. She was planning on getting here. Okay.
Then it's Dr. Fahey.
Okay.
Doc,
You're gonna.
and afterwards an open mic.
Okay. After Pat, we will have an open mic for anybody who wants to come up and say some words.
Okay, so I need to preface this because in typical Mandel family fashion, we have to treat Pat in a way as part of the family because we argue with him. That's what the Mandels do. They argue with each other all the time. It's a tradition. Pat has been a very good friend.
Really show you something. So we go to the batting cages over by the Oakland Coliseum. You know where I'm talking about, where it used to be? It's no longer there. So we go to the batting cages, and here's Bill, you know, and so I go in there and I put on a light show. I mean, like, wow, wooden bat, crack, 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 80 miles an hour, 85, you know. Both sides, then I switched to right-handed, crack, 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 you know, everyone, you know, it was the fastest cage, you know, it's a safety danger, I don't know. So after doing that, come out and say, okay, what do you think, Bill? This is not impressed. I saw Babe Ruth in 1927. Fucking hard. So anyway, I brought my A2000 lefty catcher's mitt just for that story. So here it is. True story. Actually, Bill and I were born to the hips at birth. Look at surgeries done for us. No, I'm just kidding. So I met Bill, actually, when I was in graduate school. I took a break from my 25-year teaching career, teaching mathematics. By the way, I had to do a calc tutorial before I even got here this morning, you know, so I took calculus. So, I was, it just happened to, you know, I saw that he had his, you know, this book, you know, I go, wow, that's awesome, I always wanted to meet this guy. So I called him up, he said, okay, let's meet, you know, we hook up, and, you know, and that's how we met, you know, and so I read his book, you know, cover to cover, bought like 2 or 3 copies and gave a few to people, and after that, it was like, it was on. And, you know, like Bill, you all know what he's strong at, you know, you've been hearing that all day long, right? But one thing that he wasn't strong about was like about the universe, like the physics, the mathematics side of things, right? And that was what he was, you know, and he didn't know how many people, you know, he had a view of the universe that was very much like my grandfather, who, he was like the classical, you know, gravity is force at a distance kind of thing. Nothing about the interaction between mass in the fabric of space-time, how it curves space-time, nothing like that at all. It was a complete revelation to him. He didn't, you know, he didn't know that we only knew about 4% of the universe, which is us, you know, atomic matter that radiates. The other 96% is dark matter and dark energy. This was a complete revelation to him, that we don't know what it is, quantum mechanics. And he didn't really understand that the universe actually is expanding, or that it's accelerating. None of that was happening. So he went, okay, how do you know stuff like this? You know, how do you know? What's your reason? Okay, well, right? And I said, well, because WMAP satellite was put in at Lagrange point number 2, you know, in the Earth-Sun system. It uses the Earth to silhouette all of the photons from the sun, so it gets a nice dark look at the universe so it could look at the background microwave radiation, the oldest, coldest radiation in the universe, the actual echo of the Big Bang itself. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool just to know that, right? This was not part. So later in his later years, I mean, even before the 2006 accident, right? He was like, "Oh shit," you know. He was like, "Wow, that is right." So talk to me about the universe, and then sing and play a tune, right? And then afterwards, when I would go visit him at the hospital, he would say, "Tell me about the universe. Just talk to me about the universe." And so just talking to him about details that I had recently heard, you know, it was like, you know, kind of pushing pathways in the brain and getting things stimulating. And it really, you know, plus I would bring him a bottle of wine and sneak it into the hospital. He wasn't supposed to have, you know, and he drank. He was like, you know, it was, you know, so don't tell anybody that. That's, you know, what goes on in, you know, Berkeley, stays in Berkeley. So, but anyway, so, and he really loved, you know, classical music. So I was going to play a little Paganini piece, but he also loved the Brother, Can You Spare a Dime? And I hope he's singing something. You want to sing something? Brother, Can You Spare? Yip Harbor, 1927. The year that Babe Ruth hit 61 homers and Yankees. 60. Oh, 60, right? I'm silly. God, someone's busting me out. All right, I'm sorry, all right? So, anyway, so. They used to tell me I was, what? Living a dream. So I followed the mob. When there was earth to till our guns to bear, I was always there on the job. They used to tell me I was living a dream with peace and glory ahead. So why should I be standing in line, just waiting for bread? I must build a railroad and made it run. Come on, made it race against time. I must build a railroad, now it's done. Brother, can you spare a dime? I must build a tower to the sun, brick and rivet and lime. I must build a tower, now it's done. Now, brother, can you spare a dime? And khaki suit, oh, you look swell, full of that old Yankee doodly dum. 500,000 boots went slogging through hell, and I was the kid with what? The drum. Say, don't you remember they called me Al? It was Al all the time. Say, don't you remember I'm your pal? Now, brother, can you spare a dime? Was out, yeah. But say, don't you remember? I can't hear you. Now, brother, can you spare a dime? Yeah, yeah. Now, brother, can you spare a dime? Now, brother, can you spare a dime? Now, brother, can you spare a dime? Say, I just wanted to also make mention of Mariella, the three people, Mariella and Mark and Kalia. Kalia, yeah, who made all that food that you are digesting possible. Let's hear it for them.
Pat, and Phyllis.
And Phyllis. No, I'm Ann Phyllis. Oh, I would get my ass kicked if I would say Ann Phyllis. Yeah. And who else? The strudel and the cheese. Let's hear it for the strudel and the cheese. And also, you know, to hear, you know, Bob and Dave, particularly Bob. Wow. I just want to take, you know, Bob, you know, his heart, giving it to us and telling us all of that, you know, and just. You know, thank you, Bob. That was, I'm sorry, Bob. Sorry, Bob. I always say your name backwards. I'm dyslexic. Bob. So this is one of the pieces that he really liked. It's called Romanza, because you know, Bill was kind of romantic. You know what I mean? Yeah. He loved this song. He would like, when I would play this song, and particularly in the hospital, he would like, even, he would go, by the end of the song, he was like, all true stories. You can't make this shit up. I'm sorry, I'm a tone fascist. I come into. Okay. We won't know. Okay. Leanie, I can't tell you how much time we share. You used to cook in the kitchen, didn't we? You know, you used to make me cut the potatoes. And, you know, anyway, thanks an awful lot, folks. Have a great time.
Thank you, Pat.
Well, it was lucky to have that in the hospital. Really, that was a hard time. Maria? Mariah, I'm sorry, we just met, and she actually had lunch with Ferlinghetti today and would like to deliver a few words.
We had a lunch with City Lights people, and of course we were talking about McCarthy in relationship to today and what opportunities and challenges poets and activists had today. And in the middle of all this, Ferlinghetti, who will be 97 in March, next month, recited Bill Mandel's talk before HUAC, word for word, and everybody applauded. And we said he added how much he enjoyed his program, and he also did sign a petition to reinstate him after he lost his program. And I asked Ferlinghetti, were you there? Were you inside? And he said, no, I wasn't inside, and I'm not sure I was outside because I wasn't wet when I got home. Everybody else was hosed off. So I took the opportunity to ask David and clear this mystery forever. He was there. He was there in support of Bill Mandel, and he wanted to be sure that I tell you all how much he appreciated him and how much I appreciate you for being here. I come from the KPFA that was existed before people like he had left, and I also want to thank the people here who helped preserve it. Thank you for that. And I would have come, whatever, you know, had I had a message to bring to you or on my own behalf to honor Bill here, who was a great dancer. That's how I met him. I was at a party new to KPFA, and we danced. And he was indefatigable, he was tireless, and then I realized he was Bill Mandel. I always looked forward to KPFA parties where he was present. Thank you.
Cool. So we're going to open the mic, but first we'd like to invite Jack Kamen up. And I think most of you know Jack. If anybody carried on, well, not if anybody, Howard, Jack, we fought like hell to continue the traditions of the ILWU, the anti-apartheid boycott, the various sin boycotts, and Jack, please come and talk.
Yeah, so I was waiting to hear somebody address Bill's middle name. Nobody did. So here I am at the end. I have to bring it all out. Marx, very interesting, because Bill was born in 1917, the year of the first successful workers' revolution, the Russian Revolution. And his father participated in the 1905 Russian Revolution as a young boy, young man. So that tradition carries way, way back. And Bob, I am so envious of you, Phyllis, and Dave's father, your parents. I mean, what a rich family history and tradition you have. You should be proud of that. And at the same time, I want to say those were brilliant remarks from the heart that you spoke before us here, and it's not easy to do at your father's memorial, but you did it, and you did it well. I want to just give an idea to people here what it was like for Bill Mandel, who was subpoenaed twice before the McCarthyite committees. First in 1953 and then in 1960. But in 1953, if you can remember what was happening in the country at that time, there was an anti-communist hysteria. The Rosenbergs were being railroaded and they were executed, and this is a terrible crime against the capitalist justice system in this country that will go down in history. It was despicable. It was in that context that Bill Mandel stood before McCarthy, the linchpin of all the hysteria, stood before him, and he basically said, "To hell with you." Right? And that speech that he made was brilliant, but I thought the best speech that he made was the second time around. And the second time around was here in San Francisco, where students and workers were demonstrating in City Hall where the hearing was being held. Fire hoses were being blasted at them. They were dragged, you saw the film, they were dragged down the marble stairs. Something that we saw with, like, Bull O'Connor attacking the civil rights workers. That's the kind of brutality that was used then against people that were protesting against this government repression. And I think we have to remember that today, because one thing that people forget, they try to think, well, it was these damn Republicans, these right-wing, anti-communist Republicans. But the truth of the matter is, it was both Democrats and Republicans. Let's not forget that the liberal ADA, the Americans for Democratic Action, were just as viciously anti-communist, and they helped to purge workers out of their jobs. They split up the labor movement. And that's why we're in the situation we are today. The labor movement has atrophied to almost nothing. And then you get these sellout, betrayal trade union bureaucrats who sit down with Trump and want to make a bargain with the devil. Okay, so that's where we are today. So I want people to listen to what Bill Mandel said in 1960 here. Poignant and powerful and passionate were his words. And if you could just bear with me for a second.
Sir, I'm 42 years of age and have never had to face a jury as defendant or grand jury as witness in my life. I have committed no crime under any of the laws of this country and am not engaged in subversion. I certainly shall not answer questions representing allegations against me made by persons not present and not identified, whom I cannot confront and whom my lawyer cannot cross-examine as to their truthfulness. Do you honestly apprehend, sir, that if you told this committee truthfully while you're under oath whether or not you are now this instant or ever have been a member of the Communist Party, you would be supplying information which might be used against you in a criminal proceeding? Honorable beaters of children and sadists uniformed and in plain clothes, distinguished Dixiecrat wearing the clothing of a gentleman, eminent Republican who opposes an accommodation with the one country with which we must live at peace in order for us all and our children to survive. If you think that I am going to cooperate with this collection of Judases, of men who sit there in violation of the United States Constitution, if you think I'll cooperate with you in any way, you are insane.
My name is Jack Heyman, and I'm a retired longshoreman along with Howard Kaler, and Bill had strong links to the Longshore Union. His son Bob was in the warehouse division of the Longshore Union and led the militant caucus. His son-in-law, Keith, was also in the Longshore Union, Local 10, my local, and as well as his son Dan.
No, his grandson.
Grandson, all right, grandson Dan. But he had strong links to the LW. He also knew Harry Bridges and Lou Goldblatt. And I just want to finish by saying that militant tradition of the ILWU didn't end in 1984 with our strike against the ship from South Africa. That Howard was one of the key organizers of that action, Howard Taylor. But we've continued that militant class struggle tradition today. And just, what was it, May Day 2008, we shut down every port on the West Coast to oppose the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And those are the imperialist wars of both parties. Thank you.
Jack, thank you. With all, forgive me, but with all due respect, I'm sort of amused because as I was cutting down the film for today's presentation and thinking about Bill and McCarthy, I remembered that he made a little record in New York, actually in New Jersey, not long after a certain hearing, which I'm about to correct myself about, and he called it Man Bites Dog. And you said that Bill was called before 2 different committees, and in fact, Man Bites Dog is about his being called before the McCarran Committee 1 year before McCarthy. This pamphlet, I just discovered a real copy of it in some little bookstore in Seattle, and it's flying to me right now through the US mail. But just so you know, there is a fair amount of literature online about Bill and the McCarran Committee, where he was honing his skills to deal with McCarthy and HELAC. So you can actually, if you feel like it, you can look that up. And just all you have to do is Google Man Bites Dog. You'll find a lot of amusing things from journalists for whom this is an old expression, but you will also find stuff about Bill and McCarran. Now we're going to open up the mic, and I hope we're going to have some more people say what they want, and music.
Hi, I'm Hallie Hammer. I got to know Bill during the free radio Berkeley era. I had a folk show on there, and we'd have meetings at my house where people would scream a lot. And what my parents were visiting, and they came, and my dad was a couple of years, he was born in 1920. I guess Bill was in 17, and they started talking, and it turned out that they lived in the same neighborhood. And through all the yelling and whatever else was going on, they totally wrapped into each other and started talking about their old neighborhood. It was really great. So this is a song that I wrote 4 days after Bush was reselected, and everybody was stunned then, and as we are stunned now. But it's a song of hope, and it's called I Refuse to Believe. And please sing along when you get it. I refuse to believe that the light which we share is dimming. I refuse to believe that the good which we do will fail. I refuse to believe that the righteous will be defeated or our vitality be depleted. I refuse to believe. I refuse to believe that our strides are inconsequential. I refuse to believe that our energies will be drained. I refuse to believe, even in our bleakest moment, that our force is less than potent. I refuse to believe, for I believe we are connected to a universal power that cannot be held back for very long. And even though the forces of darkness
refuse to believe that the good which we do will fail. I refuse to believe that the righteous will be defeated or our vitality be depleted. I refuse to believe. Paul Herzog. We will not betray our humanity. I refuse to believe that our strides are inconsequential. I refuse to believe that our energies will be drained. I refuse to believe, even in our bleakest moment, that our force is less than potent. I refuse to believe. I refuse to believe. I refuse to believe. I refuse to believe. Domingo Vicente.
Mike live?
Yeah.
It's live, Howie.
One brief comment about Bill. When Anna Louise Strong was the famous writer and activist, was condemned by the Soviet Union as a U.S. agent, Bill Mandel refused to endorse that, even though the U.S. Communist Party urged him to do so. Bill was a member of the Communist Party at the time, and subsequently he was expelled from the Communist Party for refusing to condemn Anna Louise Strong. I always considered this an act of real political courage and consistency. And it was a very good model to follow. Thank you.
So my name is Steve Zeltzer, and I actually am on KPFA, still surviving on KPFA. But you know, it's great we have KPFA, even with all its problems, especially in this time that we're going through in this world. And there are going to be efforts to shut it down, there's no doubt, because the world is coming apart. And when I first went to the Soviet Union at a conference, actually against privatization, it was an eye-opener, because the people at this conference, there were workers at this conference, were saying, you know, we need some good things about capitalism to make things more efficient in the Soviet Union. And I was, like the others were saying, I was saying, well, wait a minute. In San Francisco, where I'm from, there are more people on the street than I see here. Homeless people. Oh, no, that's propaganda. That's propaganda. So when you have people looking at the United States with the gold streets paved with gold, with this stereotype, you're in a position of weakness, because they don't have the truth about what's happening, and they don't believe the government. They believed capitalism would be social democratic like Sweden. So anyway, I talked with many of these people and interviewed them. When I got back here, I said, I got to talk to Bill and ask him, you know, talk to him about what I learned. So he really was in his own dream world about the Soviet Union. He thought it wasn't going to collapse. It was going to continue. When it did collapse, he was he was in a state of shock. I mean, he was saying, well, we've got to collect money here to send to the Soviet Union to help them out, as if that was the question. We had raising money to send to the Soviet Union. But I think one of the things that's very interesting about this time is, in the 100th anniversary of the Russian Revolution, is there's always been this fear brought in the United States that Russia was going to take over the United States. And now you have in this country a Russian agent, really, that's what they're saying, who actually has taken over the United States. You know? So it took 100 years. It took 100 years, but they have a Russian agent in Washington now. And actually the Democrats and Republicans are both against him because of that. You know? Because they really want to go after Russia, you know, and attack Russia. So that is one of the contradictions that we have in this society. But the other thing is that, I think there's a revitalization of the world. Today, as a matter of fact, there are demonstrations all over the world against Trump, and in the United States there are demonstrations. Immigrant workers, all kinds of people. So actually, Trump is uniting the world. You know, he is uniting the world against him. And I think that that's a very positive thing, because the people that are being activated right now are all confused or angry. What is happening? Why is this happening? And actually, it's a reflection of the decline of US imperialism, really, and capitalism. And Trump says he's going to make it great again, which is, of course, ludicrous. But that is the reality. People thought there was some hope to make this another great imperialist country. It's done. And I think we have an opportunity, and that's why the people in this room, the people that have knowledge about history, are so important right now. Because people have real questions. Why is this happening? Why do we have a madman, crazy guy, as president of the United States with a Leninist, so-called Leninist, Bannon behind him, you know, the de facto president? That's the situation we're in. And that is a dangerous situation. And there's a danger of a world war with attacking Iran and other countries and the whole militarization. But at the same time, especially in the Bay Area, in Silicon Valley, a large number of people now are asking, what is going on? Do I have to leave the United States? What is happening with capitalism? Now is really our time, and particularly with young people and immigrants, to unite all people. And this is our opportunity. This is why we have to build a real movement. And I think Trump is going to actually help build that movement for us. What develops out of it is our responsibility, but that's our task. And I think for Bill Mandel, the dream of a socialist world, I think, is much closer now. Thank you.
We're going to kick some ass.
So in that vein, there's going to be an event here on March 26th that I'm organizing with Eleanor Walden. It's called a town hall for citizens and organizations. It's going to be a musical town hall, but it's going to be many satellite cities doing a simulcast. Rockville, Maryland, some Michigan, here, maybe in Washington State, and a few other places. So we're trying to get as many places so we can have a simulcast and have people have this town hall across time zones. So that's what's going on March 26th from 2 to 5, 1 to 4, who knows? You know how this one went, right? So be looking for that. So it's going to be on Facebook and various sorts of things. Okay, so let's move on to it.
We have time for one more commentator, then we have to depart. Sorry, but that's the rules here. Thank you.
Somebody else wants to take my... my name is Lynn Kalmar, and I admired Bill greatly, and listened to him, read his books, and all of that. But one of the aspects of Bill that has not been mentioned today, which I loved, I can't stand still when the music is good. I have to dance. And Bill was a terrific dancer. And I found this out at one of the Bolshevik cafes when Spirit of 29 started playing, and I got up to dance because I couldn't sit still. And Bill got up and danced with me. And from then on, he was my dance partner at anything that we were at together.
I am going to close this in a minute. I want to say a couple of things. Just, I've not been the scholar that either of my brothers are or that my father was. But Bill's love of socialism and his heartbreak at the demise of the Soviet Union, and all the songs that I was raised with, I got it, as they say, by osmosis. If Bill were alive today, he would not, and you know, everybody's talking about people hating Russians again. So whenever I hear this on Facebook or anything like that, I say, you need to distinguish between Mr. Putin, who is an oligarch, no different than our current president, who's got money invested every place under the sun, and he is not a representative of the Russian people by any stretch of the imagination, and probably as many of the Russian people in the old Soviet Union and all the republics as we have here in the United States who are against Trump or against Putin, and that they are a peace-loving people no matter what, and they would not be interested in the kind of person that Trump is. So I just want to say that, and I try to think of a song that we could end this with and say goodbye to my dad. We could sing the International?
Yeah. Right. G minor.
Okay.
Afterwards, please pick up little things and throw them in the trash. Thank you.
Okay.
When I go there?
Thunder's condemnation, a better world in birth. No more tradition, shame shall bind us there, more involved. The earth shall rise on new foundations, we have been on, we shall be all. 'Tis the final human race. 'Tis the final conflict that he standing here plays. The international working class shall be the human race.
Thank you all for being the people that you are, and the people with whom Bill loved to spend his life and share his time.
You didn't want to add it.
September March 26th.
We don't want to.
Town hall for citizens and organizations.